This is part 2 of building a full Western saddle from the tree up. Last time I showed you me putting in this ground seat. It's now cured and it's ready for me to stretch the seat, which is the next step. I'll take you through that entire process of how I lay it out and how I cut it out and how I stretch it and all the steps involved in that. The most difficult part of building the saddle is this part. This is the most wasted leather of all the processes. Outside of cutting 2 rights, messing up the seat is the one that anybody who's ever tried to build a saddle has messed up the seat a few times. So I'll show you how to do it, and hopefully you can avoid it if you ever wanted to try it. Okay, let's cut some leather. Okay, so I'm gonna go through kind of the basic layout of parts. You have to work around imperfections, holes, knife cuts in the leather. Here's a bad spot in the milling process that I can use on the smooth outside, but I can't use it for anything for strength. This is a rough out seat and rough out fender. So I'll start with the rough out, laying out the rough outside, and just give you guys kind of an idea. Okay, this is an inskirt rigging. This is the front portion of that rigging. I'm taking the stirrup leather out of this spine. Here's where I take the seat out, and it can kind of vary up and down depending on the quality of the hide. And then the rear jockeys, the rear part of the skirt, since this is a inskirt rig, the rear part of the skirt is going to come out of here like this. And these 2 pieces, depending on, I may not have enough on this skin, so I'll have to pull out the other one. This has got front and rear jockeys, so this takes about a side and a half for a saddle like this. A full inskirt rigging, the lightweight versions that I do is usually a side, depending how big it is. But one of the things about skirting is the actual sides of leather have gotten smaller. The steers are smaller. You used to be able to get a full saddle out of a side easily, and now it's taken a side and a half because they're not as deep. So if you look, this depth right here, you used to be able to count on 4.5 to 5 feet of depth, and this usable leather on this now is about 3 feet.
Wow.
Yeah. And this hide isn't even 8 feet long. I mean, this table's 8 feet long. And it used to be these hides would drape.
Why is that?
I just think they're killing steers sooner. I don't know. I really don't know what it is. It's making smaller hides. I guess they're smaller animals. The breeds are smaller, I guess. Getting in the market faster, that's part of it. I just started buying some leather from a company in Texas that gets, for my Latigo, that gets their steers from Argentina. And those hides, so these skins are about 24 square feet. Those skins are 18 to 20 square feet. So those cows are even smaller. So I don't know. Why the cows getting smaller? I don't know. Less feed, I guess. All right. So we'll get these parts cut out and get this seat cased and start the process of fitting it up. try to make this cut one consistent, so you're not going back over it. That's just one continuous. And then you get a nice straight edge out of it. Well, I've got a good straight edge here. I will cut my billet straps out. Simple Osborne strap cutter. When you buy them, they come with a blade that you can sharpen, but what I like to do is just use a utility blade. And then as I use it, I just raise it a little bit, and then I get a fresh edge until it's dull, and then pitch it. Yeah, so you can get your adjustments. We just cut 1 3/4, 1.5 inches, like that. It's pretty handy.
I've used it one time, and I cut the bejesus out of myself with it.
Yeah, that's probably, let's avoid that part. All right, so all of these parts that I'm cutting out right now, these are rough cut, and I'll finish them up on the saddle. So this part, let me just show you. I'm going to give this a rough cut. This part right here, this is a rear jockey, and because everything varies, the weight of the leather is just a little bit different. Nothing will fit the same, so you have to rough cut it first, and then fit it up as we go. So this is just a general shape, and then as I get the cantle back on and all of that stuff, the skirt's on, then we'll fit this to fit that curve. Okay, we started working on the hats. Got some logos cut out and stamped, and a little carving edge ready to go. And we'll be mounting these on the front of the hats and getting them shipped out to anybody who orders. Go to the website and get yours ordered. Remember, we're only doing 15 of these, so they'll go fast. All right, this is pretty much all the parts for a saddle. Still have to cut out the parts to cover the stirrups. And there's the actual stirrup leather, which we cut out earlier, that's not on this table. From here, what we're gonna do is we're gonna stretch this seat, get it shaped to the tree, and then once that dries, we'll be able to start assembling the different parts and how they fit in the process, the steps that I take. And I think you're gonna see why it takes 40 hours to build a saddle. All right, so here we go. This saddle, I don't know if we mentioned this, is gonna have shine roll. And you know, it's weird because I'll build 10 saddles without doing a shine roll, and then suddenly I get people who want shine rolls. So I don't know if they read it in a magazine or what.
People don't read magazines anymore, Dad.
Yeah, well, an article about Cheyenne rolls or something. So anyway, I'm doing quite a few right now. Get this glued up. This is the first part of it. This is the filler. And then everything will be based on where this filler lies. So let's get that glued down. You can still read a magazine. This isn't paper anymore. Hey, come on. I saw you reading the Colorado Outdoors magazine.
That's different. It's a lot of photos. It's mostly photos.
The kind of book you like.
Yeah.
You like them. I like them.
I like the
books with
picture
a lot of
books.
pictures.
Yeah.
This is the Cheyenne roll filler. This is how I like to do it. So I'll go down here and I'll marry that to the edge of the ground seat. And then after I get this all laid down, we'll skive it. There, just beat that into submission. Crease. And then the Cheyenne roll, candle back will come up, lay underneath there, and then the Cheyenne roll will lay over this. That'll give it a lot of strength. I had a gentleman ask me why I don't use a spoke shave for this. And I tried a spoke shave once, and they just are too aggressive. They take off too much material. And then I settled on this this kind of skiver, and you know, that's what I'm used to now. Not changing now. So now that we have that part in there, so what I'll do is I want to get the distance. So this is a 15-inch seat, and what I like to do is match the length of the seat to this, to where the seat button breaks. So this is where we'll cut that away, and we'll do the same thing over here. I'll use a 3-inch circle, and I'll start it right on that mark. Give me a nice arch here for the edge of the Cheyenne roll. So that's where now the seat button will go underneath there and lay across onto the bar. That'll be, and I'll show you when I get to cutting that out how that works. Something that I didn't do beforehand is I'll put a tack right here. So I want this tack to be right on the edge of the candle right here so that this doesn't pull away. It's going to be based on this line right here. So what I do is I take, the line I'm talking about is this one that I just created with that bend right there. And I'm going to go an inch. In this case, it's going to be 1.5 inches Cheyenne roll. So I'm going to go 1.5 inches in that line. So these heavy-duty leather shears, I'm going to get this line cut. And it works pretty good up to about, yeah, let's get it levered. About 8 ounces of leather. These are basically 2 knife blades. But they aren't great for really, lightweight leather trimming. We got our center mark right here, okay? Go from the center down 8 inches, make a mark there, and then from the center down 8 inches to here. This is where these 2 front seat buttons go. Okay, and then from the front of the bar to that spot, I'd go 4 inches on both sides. Now, every saddle tree has slight variations, right? They're handmade. These are not injection molded. And so you can get some variety between this point and this point. There can be some variety. So as a saddle maker, you got to make up for that and make sure that it works. So for the seat buttons, based on the length of the seat, I'll take this distance here And for a 15-inch seat, that's usually about 13 inches right there. And that's gonna be roughly the back of that seat button. It won't be exact because when we finally get to cutting it and stuff, it kind of varies. But this gives me a good guideline to how far back I'm gonna cut my seat buttons when we get to that step. So, Kate just mentioned show a seat button. So that's what these are. These are the seat buttons. And this isn't for this particular saddle, but you can see how that's gonna fold underneath when this is all done. That shine roll there. Same thing on this side, okay? So these seat buttons here, this is what ties the seat down. And anytime I do a saddle with bucking rolls, we'll have a big wood screw that goes from one side to the other, you know, to hold the bucking rolls down. And I mark out, this is gonna be my 2-inch. This one's a 2-inch, roughly, circle. This back one is 1 3/4 inches. And what this does for me is it allows me to keep my, what has always happened to me, and this is the way I solved the problem, was these two distances on both sides, after you get the piece of leather out and stretched and wet, the shapes want to move around a little bit, and this gives you those guidelines to get back to force the leather to stay in the position you want it to be. So you have those reference guides. You'll see when we get to it, they won't exactly line up to these spots, but it's just a guide. It gives us a thing to shoot for. So I want to take from about the center of the handhold down to the center of that seat button line. That spot right there. And this is going to be, that's going to be the front of the seat. So that'll be the cut that I make in the seat, and then for the seat buttons, this will be the fork cover, and the seat will come over that, and this will be its line. In this case, I'm doing the pinking with the spots, and then, you know, cut the handhold out like that. So that's the layout to get the seat ready to be stretched. So that's the next step. All right, so these, whenever you pull a piece of leather down, stretch the seat down, is a really complex shape. And these braces, I guess, they're just lined with sheepskin. It's skirting leather lined with sheepskin, and I screw them in right here, and that keeps, what the problem with is this jockey, when it stretches over that seat, it wants to buckle. And you're always fighting that. So this kind of helps reduce that buckling by giving the leather something to press against when you stretch it down. So I just screw these on before I put the seat down. To give us a backing for that leather. You'll see what I'm talking about when we get to stretching the seat, because it'll certainly buckle. He'll certainly show me. Why is this spinning so bad? What's going on here? I think I need to adjust my, look at that. Gotta do a little equipment work. Again, I mean, it has to happen every once in a while. Come on. I'm telling you.
Give me strength. Freaking Phillips head, man. Hard to believe those used to be the bee's knees.
That's right. Okay, so next step here is we'll stretch the leather, and that's the big part. That's the part that makes or breaks the project, is that piece of leather. So let's hope we don't mess it up this time. All right, so we let this case. It's pretty damp. I like to start with, it's really damp. This would be a lot wetter than I'd use to tool. So you can see it's got a lot of moisture content. And what I do start with is kind of fold this D in half and just give myself a rough idea where the center is. Just make a little mark like that. And then I'm going to cut a couple reliefs like this. And then eventually, this is where the handhold's going to go, and I'll cut an oval there, but that's probably the most difficult part to get exactly right because it keeps wanting to get bigger as you stretch it, so you want to be pretty conservative to start with. All right, over here to the tree. And as you can see with this, it's a pretty complex curve, right? We got a lot. Going to ask this leather to do a lot of stuff, so you got to take it really slow. And let me reestablish my center here. You got to take it pretty slow so that you can just gradually work this curve into it. All right, so what I'll do is I want to tack so I'm going to tack this in position right here. That's just to keep me centered. And the same thing is going to happen here. So Cade's coming around here. So you see this center cut? And this is about the bottom of the handhold, so I have that much to work with. So I'm going to give myself a little more relief there so that can spread. And then I'm going to run a screw right here in that split. So that keeps my leather centered. Because the most difficult part is this part right here. Coming up. What I'm going to try to do here, or am going to do here, is establish where this seat button is going to get cut on this piece of leather. So I have a little stylus, show them that I bent. So I can get in here like this and run that.
Press it through?
Yeah, no, not press it through. I'm dragging a line,
I see.
and I'm just tracing that shape. Okay? And what that's given me is that mark right there. So I take my candle pliers and run them right up to the, see me hitting the tree? Hear me hitting the tree? And I run them right up to that and make this mark. That shows me the relief I've got, right? So it gives me that line for where the end of the tree is. So anything on this side of that line I can sew into. This is wood, right? So now I'm going to take this little fancy high-tech stylus I've got here, and I'm going to take it and lay it on that line and just drag it up that line onto the leather so I can feel it making a little mark. Just a ways up like that. And then we'll take this seat off. I've got these reference points. This is the stitch line, roughly, and that's the edge of the Cheyenne roll right there. And so I'm going to create the seat button like this. I'll show you how I do that. So we can cut that seat button out, and then we can have that relief, and then we'll fill that lost space in later, and I'll show you that. So here's the thing. This leather is soaking wet. So it's got a lot of, it's expanded. It's bigger than it was when it was dry, right? So it took me years to figure out how to avoid this. I'd mark this perfect wet, it'd shrink back to normal size, and then there wouldn't be enough leather here to stitch, and then I'd have to start over. So this is the ideal stitch line. But what I do is I add 1/4 inch to that all the way up. Okay, so that's the actual starting point. And then I'll start about 1/4 inch from that line that I drew. Okay, So this is gonna be, that's gonna be where I punch my hole. So then I'm gonna take, from that spot, I'm gonna go back 2.5 inches and make this arc. Because this line, so this is my stitch line, and then I'm gonna come out here and make this sweep. So this is what the leather that's gonna be left to stitch to. And then this is my seat button. So I've got, let me give you a real figure here. So make that, that's a 1/2 inch from that guideline. So I have a 1/2 inch of material, of leather. So we'll make that 1/2 inch line, and then I'm gonna take my 1 3/4 oval or circle, and I'm gonna, this will be my seat button. Now, I've seen other saddle makers do it differently than this, but this is how I do it. Some guys have templates, but I feel like you need to have room for things to change. All right, so there's my first hole, and that's where the binder's gonna tuck under. I'm gonna make this cut right here. I'm gonna follow this, just kind of a very gradual curve. Get outside of that. Okay, do you see how I did that? Just a gentle kind of curve. So when this is done, this will be the cannel, and this is where the cannel binding will live underneath that. Hopefully that makes sense.
Clear as mud.
Back to the guidelines, the guide pins. I don't know why I took this one out. I shouldn't have taken this one out. Okay, so put this back up there. Put this back in the holes. That's why I found that screws, doing this with screws gives you the best chance to get it back to where it was to start with. All right, so every time you put this in, start doing this. All right, just gently start working the curve into it. This is the most physical part. All right, so now we're going to go do the other side exactly the way we just did that one. All right, now we got both sides cut. Okay? And what we're going to do next is I'm going to punch this hole and create this little ear here, and then we'll get the drawdown strap and we'll start getting it stretched. 1.5 inches to the edge of that hole, and then I'm going to take this number 9, and that'll stretch to become a, I don't know, number 15 or something after it's all done. It's amazing how far it stretches. So then I've got that one there. And then we'll cut this. Cut these little. And we'll go back in when this is all said and done and grind these even and smooth them out and stuff. Because they kind of take a beating, at least the way I do it anyway. All right, so next I'm going to take my grinder and I'm going to go into each one of these and I'm going to taper this so it lays down flat. I'm not taking away leather on the surface, just underneath. So this will lay down flat underneath the, so see how that's beveled, so that when the binding goes under, it has a place to go, and then this lays down flat. Okay, back on the tree. Now we'll take our drawdown strap. Hey, would you? No, I got a ruler. Let me give you guys some dimensions on this if you ever wanted to make one of these. So the leather fold to fold, 44 inches, and it's about 8 inches wide. And I've been using this particular one for 25 years, and it's just, it just works. So you come down to your hooks. And this piece of wood here will keep me from pulling this size of the leather down too sharp, right? So it kind of gently forces this leather to lay down, and it's, you know, it's not going to want to. All right. So now, you don't worry too much about the position. Just start working the kinks out of it. So when you have little humps like this, just work them out. I'll go through this it takes about 20 minutes of just working it, slowly getting the leather to give to the position you want it to be in. And then once it gets to the spot that you want it in, and the leather starts to set back up, then I'll find my tie down points, front and back, cut my jockeys in my handhold, and then I'll let it dry overnight. So I'll just keep doing this until this leather does what I want it to. And the thing about rough out is it doesn't like to stretch. The leather doesn't like to stretch this way as much. So if it's smooth out, it lays down easier.
Really?
And I don't know why. It seems like it shouldn't be that way.
It seems like it should be the opposite.
Yeah. It's just whenever I'm doing a rough out, it just doesn't go down as easily. So
I vividly remember one time when I was a kid watching you do this, and you were fighting this seat for hours, and you were so frustrated because I think you were still kind of figuring out how to do it.
Was I cussing?
Oh yeah, that's where I learned all of my cuss words.
Yeah, I bet. Oh yeah,
But yeah, I remember you could not get it to lay down right.
This is a huge piece of leather. You know, when you're trying to have a business and make money at it, it's wasted. Mm-hmm. It's so frustrating. It can really be maddening.
Yeah.
But I've pretty well whooped it.
Got it down to a science.
Yeah, well. And then you guys will find out in the video that, had to recut that seat. Oops. This does not have to be perfect. This is just for position only relative to the handhold will be bigger than that, but this just gives you an idea how much, see, look how much it's already wanting to stretch away from that. And so that'll help let this lay down. That's probably the thing I learned the most was just go slow. Small cuts. And then over the years, that's paid off. Okay, I'll just keep doing this, and then we'll get it down to where it starts to look like a seat. We've got the leather giving, so it's stretched across the center of the seat, and so I am locating that spot that I marked on the ground seat, and I want to make a mark right there that's the center of this 2-inch circle right there. Okay, so then I'll take my 2-inch template, and that's the center I just marked, as opposed to the other center. And I'll just do a light scribe like this. All right, and we'll do the same thing on this side. Okay, this is not exactly where you're going to end up, but it gives you a good idea where you're going. Okay, so now we've got this line right here that's traveling down the center of that and up that we drew the other day. And now that I'm standing here looking at this, I rushed it because that needs to be higher. No problem, it's just a line, right? So what I'm doing there is I'm recalibrating. So this line right here, I'm gonna follow that back down to that center line, to that center hole, right? And I'm gonna draw that line. So that's the end. That's where we'll do the pinking. And so these flexible straight edges, get them on Amazon. They're really handy for this kind of stuff. So this is the center hole. This is the center mark. Don't put this screw in that center mark because you want that to be available. Just don't put it there. Just put this kind of off. This will be covered by a concho. But make sure you plan for these things not, these holes and stuff being covered by conchos and underneath parts. All right, so now let's take this off and I'll show you how I do the jockeys. Wrinkle, putting down the ground seat, this is a wrinkle. This happens in any saddle maker. You run into this where it's not happening on this side. This is just, a natural fiber. So after we get this thing off of the tree, I'll run a piece of leather up under here and lay it down again so it has something to press against. That means there's nothing to press against underneath there. Next step is this. This is going to be the curve down to the jockey. And the way I've got this designed, I want for this to be level to the eye. I want this line to be at the bottom of that button and about dead center on this button. So that's about right. And then what I'll do is trace this curve here and make that mark because that tells me the center of it. And then I'm going to move it over. And it's amazing how much this size varies, this length.
Based on the size of the seat the customer
Yeah, the size of the seat and just the way you've cut it, and it just doesn't always come out exactly. So then, before we cut this out, we'll lay our flexible edge and we'll get that curve nice and smooth. And we'll go do that here in a second. So let's repeat that over here. And then we'll cut that out, and then we'll be on our way to getting the seat done because this allows it to lay down really good. Okay, so this is a 3/4 inch bag punch. And that's my bottom curve. Now some people, just to give you an idea, some makers, and I see them do it, I don't know how they pull it off because it's never worked for me. They'll cut this side out, then they'll fold this in half, and they'll match that. I have never been able to get the seat buttons to line up doing it that way. Never.
Yeah.
So I totally abandoned that. I did that. That's the way I started out trying it. Saw a guy do it that way and thought, I'll give that. No. No, that just cost me freaking leather.
I'd be willing to bet you can't get it even by doing it that way.
I'm not willing to give it another try, that's for sure. All right. And then we'll draw it down tight and we'll let it, and then this will sit for a few hours.
You gonna put a piece of leather into that fold?
Yep. I am. So you can see I have pre-skived piece is ready to roll. I'll stuff that up there in about the right spot. And then we'll ask this leather to lay back down again. No, let me put that a different way. We'll demand that this leather lay down again. If you ask, it won't cooperate. Okay, so we're gonna let that sit for a little while and learn its new shape. All right, so I've done this so often, gotten this down to where I can anticipate using these little scraps off the seat are just the right size to cut, usually the right size to cut this rigging hanger, or this girth hanger. I'll cut that out of here. And then this part right here will be good for, this is the breast collar D. And out of that seat, that's the scrap. Okay, we've let this sit now for, it's been here for a couple hours. So what I'm doing here is I'm getting the handhold centered on this saddle horn. And that will cut that out. And then we'll pink this edge and that edge, and I'll show you laying out the inlaid pad shape. So take your tape measure from hole to hole, so we're at 13.5. Quick, what's the math?
7 2/4.
6 3/4.
Gosh! Never do math on camera.
Yeah. All right, so I've kind of got this template that I use from, I've used from several saddles, many saddles. This is a wider, because this is a woman, for a woman, I make this inlaid pad wider because they have wider seat bones. So the point to point is wider on women. All right, so that's the spot. That's where that's going to get cut out. We'll take this off the tree and make a couple cuts, and then we'll let it sit overnight. All right, so I'm gonna, this is my little pinking iron, and I'm giving myself an idea of where these are gonna fall, because I want them to end right at the handhold. Go slow on this cut. You don't get this one back. This is a one-time shot, this deal. While it's supple, we'll take all these, anything that's not smooth. this back in position. We'll throw the drawdown stand on it, and we'll let that dry overnight. One of the things that you have to be aware of is once you've made these cuts, it's going to want to spread more. So I'll show you. I'll rest that and keep that from happening so it can dry back. And then you want this to, we'll cut this out after this is dried so that it doesn't spread more than it should, right? Because once this hole is cut out, this whole seat would want to spread out. Mm-hmm. So we'll cut it when it's dry. So back on the tree it goes. Now, if I was going to rush this and I wanted to, just crank it, you could do all this cutting and just glue it down and be done with it. But then you're not going to get your edges right. You're not going to be able to sand these edges smooth. Do all the detail work that sets it apart. All right, so I don't want this handhold to spread any more than that. So I'm going to go in here. These get nails when it's all said and done. So what we're doing here is we're giving this a new memory, this leather. So in the final stage, it wants to be here. Okay, we'll let it sit overnight, and then we'll do the finish edges, cut out the ground seat, or cut out the inlaid pad, and then I'll show you how I put that in and get this seat ready to mount. All right, so we let that dry overnight. And then I have since dampened it so we can get this inlaid contour cut out. We'll do that right now. And then I'll take you through the process of cutting out the inlaid seat and the chap leather that we'll sew in there. And I'll edge all of this and get ready for gluing down. So let's go over here and start cutting. What I do on this, I kind of jumped ahead here and did it so we could make sure everything's good, but I use a protractor to get after I've done my rough shape, I use a protractor to get my center. So I'll draw my center line, and you can see that right there. And then just make sure everything is proportional.
Symmetrical
in the center of the seat so that when you mount it, you don't have any issues because things drift. All right, get your knife good and sharp. You guys that are using head knives, the round knives, this is a pushing process rather than a pulling process to cut out. And just take your time, real slow, follow that line.
High consequence here.
Yep, this is where you ruin the whole seat if you let it jump. Try your best to let that knife follow that hard line that you've scribed into the leather, but slow and steady. And when I feel the knife doing that, where it's checking that way, that means it needs to be polished. You can cut this out wet or dry. Anytime I'm doing the seat like I've tooled it, I'm going to tool it and say do a border around this. I will cut it out. I'll cut it out dry so I can get a really hard border line to tool to. But in this case, we're not doing that, so this makes it a lot easier to do it. And the leather's damp. Okay, so we'll take this piece. We'll take this piece over to the Dremel tool and just smooth out any place that wasn't really nice.
Okay, we'll set this aside for a minute. Now, we're going to take this piece. Okay, so this is the inlaid foam. This is a closed cell, high density seat foam, and it's really made for this. I used to use neoprene, and it doesn't recover fast enough.
Okay. I remember when you used to
Yeah,
use
I used to use, and I thought it would be more durable, but it doesn't recover from the pressure fast enough. This stuff works a lot better, and they've come a long way. Old seat foams used to be really open. This has got a nice density to it, so it works great. And it's just enough padding to take the heat off. All right, so then just trace this. Now you see I'm using this inlay that I cut out as my template rather than the hole, because the hole wants to go all over the place, and this will give you a way more accurate, and then you can just bring everything back to this shape here. All right, so there's that piece. And then we'll take this is our chap leather that we're going to put in the seat. And in this case, what we're doing is tracing this shape in position. Then I'll trim. And this way we'll bring our seat opening back to this shape here. You want to do all of this on the seat contour so that it's exactly the same as when you assemble it. Because if you did this flat, everything changes. And I can show you. I can show you just now, just after cutting this out, how different that shape is just there.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because it wants to spread. So when we put this back on, we will pull. Everything will come back into, everything will come back into shape so it fits right.
Yeah.
Like that, right? We'll give ourselves about an inch or so of overlap here. This doesn't have to be perfect. This is what's going to go underneath the seat. And then we will skive this down paper thin right here all the way around. We'll do that. And we also have to skive the seat down. We'll do that. But before we do any of that, you want to take your Dremel tool and you want to score the surface on this outside edge. Don't go in too far. Keep it away from that line because you don't want this to show. But this is what we're gluing to right here. And this will hold the whole thing in place while we assemble. Get it ready for sewing. Yeah, so here. And you know you're reaching the right level. You see how that color changes? Now we're getting into the hair cell. Out of the suede into the hair cell. And then we know we're at that super thin. So you don't end up with any kind of a bulge underneath, on the seat. You want that to be a smooth transition. We'll work on the seat next, but this will go in like this. And we'll go right to that pencil line and glue it down.
Cool.
We need to edge this. Okay, so if you were tooling this, if you were gonna tool this, stamp a border stamp of some kind, this is when you do it. At this point, at this moisture level. And you'd come in here with your, compass, and you'd mark your edges and all that kind of stuff. But with a rough out, I rarely ever do any kind of serious tooling. Some people try it, but I just don't think it stays long enough to be worth the extra time. And with the rough out, you really have to push. Get that score to stay in place. Do this enough, you'd be like Popeye with one big forearm. I like to add this little detail. Now we go back to the skiver. I have to get this down to... So what I shoot for on this is about half the thickness, so that this is 12-ounce leather. So I'll try to get this down about half the thickness, so there's still enough meat to hold the thread properly. You got to be careful with rough out, because this is the strength.
Is the smooth side.
Is the smooth side. And so if you take out too much material, your stitches will just pull through. So you got to just be really careful about taking away too much material. And when your pad is in, your pad will rise up and fill that height, and then it'll be plenty comfortable for the rider. I might go a little thinner than this with the smooth out seat. Just don't get too aggressive. You can always go back and do it again. Take out a little more. Can't ever put it back, of course. That looks pretty good. And then we'll hit this one more time. Edge this.
Nice.
Everything's clean, all right? And we're gonna let this set up for a little while, for about 30 minutes with the cutout that we put in here, so that it will stay in this shape. And just let this dry just a little bit before we get too aggressive with the rest of it. Next thing we're gonna do here, get some glue on the edge of this. And all we're doing is gluing the edge of where we scored the surface, to stain this edge here.
Sorry to bother you down there.
And in this case, the glue is just there to hold it in position while we sew it together. So when I'm doing is I'm winding this up to those lines that we scribed. All right, while that's setting up, take our cutout. And just make sure everything stays where it's supposed to be. So we'll let this dry for a minute and then we'll sew it up. So I'm taking this nylon brush here. I'm bringing the nap up.
So your brush is falling apart.
Yeah. I don't know what I used it last. But something dissolved bristles. Here's our inlaid foam. And I need to take this edge off. So there's some taper to it. We'll glue that up. And we'll set it all in there like that. This step is another one where you're going to put everything on wet. And we'll glue both sides. So this is the part that meets the leather, or the chap leather. Just the inside of it. I'm just going to lay that right on like that. Take it over to the saddle tree. And then it's a process of just, because while that glue moves, you can squish it around, right? And get that inlay to mold. And all those little humps and stuff, all you're doing is getting air bubbles out of here. And it'll dry nice and smooth when it takes overnight. You gotta let it dry overnight, but so once you get that back in,
Ooh.
you go back to this. Did you see how I had to stretch that?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't do this, it's not going to go back in the way that it was originally laid out. So there you go. So that's going to dry overnight, just like that.
Do you ever use that stretcher to squeeze it down?
No, not on this part, but in the end, when it's all finished, when this is all finished and dry, we'll get this all glued down, and I'll get this damp, and I'll lay that down as the final thing.
Okay.
But for now, you just let this glue set up in position like that, and it'll come out nice and flat. Okay, so we'll let this dry. Once this is all set up, then we'll be able to mark out the handhold, and in the next video, we'll have I'll take you through the handhold, staining the ground seat, putting on the fork cover, positioning the cantle back. We'll do the rough out fenders, and if we can, we could start the skirts, but we'll see where we get on that. But that'll be in the next video. So if you enjoyed this content, like and subscribe, and we'll see you on part 3. Thanks for watching.